Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another weather forecast here by Agent of the Forecast. And it's going to be another update on the upcoming potential for a severe weather outbreak tomorrow across portions of Dixie Alley, as well as the overall Mississippi River Basin, as well as portions of the Tennessee Valley. So we're going to be watching out overall for a pretty widespread radius of potential severe weather, including tornadoes, wind, and of course hail. As of now, we still have a slight risk for this from the Storm Prediction Center, but there's a possibility this could get upgraded to an enhanced risk, as there is a few minor issues with the severe weather setup, but in general, it still looks worthy of a tornado threat and as well possibly a tornado outbreak in portions of the Mississippi and Alabama. But before we get into the video, I would recommend you guys subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. If you really enjoy this type of content, please smash that like button so so I can get a better overall idea of who likes this type of content as well, so this can get recommended on the recommended page for other people who have not already seen this channel before. So let's try to get this video seen as many people as possible, so there is awareness of this potential outbreak tomorrow. But without further ado, let's get in the forecast. So this is the latest 1730Z day 2 outlook. So we do not have an enhanced risk yet, but they have enlarged a slight risk now deeper into much of Tennessee, now getting closer to the Kentucky border, as well as a slight risk is further into Louisiana, further into Arkansas, and now it's further into Georgia. The slight risk actually now includes 11 million people. I believe yesterday in my video it included 6.3 million, so it has practically doubled in population as it now includes Nashville and as it now includes near the areas of northwest Georgia near Chattanooga. But we did a slight risk all across this area from the just near the Mississippi River Basin, near the eastern Arkansas and northeastern Louisiana, all the way up towards just to the west of the Appalachian Mountains, so in the southwest Appalachians, near northwest Georgia, portions of southeastern Tennessee, and eastern Alabama. So this is a pretty large area of severe weather. It does include big cities like Memphis, Nashville, Birmingham, Jackson, and Huntsville. And then a marginals from the Gulf of Mexico to portions of Texas and Oklahoma, where we do have a wind and hail threat all the way up towards the actual Appalachians, getting towards the Carolinas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So that marginal includes 22.5 million people, including New Orleans, Atlanta, Baton Rouge, Montgomery, and Shreveport. So there is some really odd wording with this latest outlook. I feel like there's definitely I feel like the SPC is definitely underestimating this. I mean, I understand why they have not gone enhanced first. There is the surface wind field is going to really weaken as this trough kind of elongates into a long wave. That is understandable. However, I think there is the thermos are obviously there, and the kinematics are also going to be there. The latest HFR and the NAM, they definitely, I'd say, not as intense as the 0Z model runs, which actually were practically shoving a moderate type setup, but I still think it's worth an enhanced risk setup for a tornado. So here's the overall look at what we're kind of looking at. So we're going to be looking at initial shortwave trough currently right now, and that's actually going to actually kind of broaden out into a long wave, and then we're missing another shortwave trough now towards Southern California coast, which will quickly move through the southwest and into Southern Plains Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning. So that's gonna right now it's actually a pretty strong trough, and actually it has a really strong axis right now in the southwest. But as it gets kind of practically pushed to the east, it's gonna actually broaden out. So this is actually going to allow for this moisture and these thermos off the Gulf of Mexico to get pushed into the Mississippi River Delta and as well into the Dixie Alley. But there's going to be seeing some good moist little trajectories across the southeast into Wednesday ahead of the increasingly diffuse cold front that will likely be positioned across parts of East Texas into Arkansas. A deep moist layer is already present on Tuesday morning's regional sounding from the southeast, along with elevated mixed layer and accompanying moderate mid-level lapse rates. The primary feature of interest will be the mid-level shortwave through that will move through parts of the southern and central plains and into the upper Midwest by late in the period. The amplitude of the shortwave has varied within model guidance for the past couple days. Consequently, the strength of the surface low within the mid Mississippi Valley has also varied. The current trend has been for a slightly weaker drop in a more diffused surface low. So that last sentence is why they have actually stayed at a slight risk. This last right here So this trough right now is really strong. It actually has a kind of a negative tilted axis, and it's going to continue to stay practically negative tilted. The one issue is it's going to kind of transition into a long wave and not really a short wave. So that's where we're going to most likely start to see those veered winds, and especially at this low is going to be practically weaker and in a weakening trend. Then the overall steepness of this low pressure is going to be pretty low, which will allow for veered wind at the surface, which would practically favor more of a wind threat and a hail threat. You really want to have those backed winds, so you kind of have that strong directional shear and as well that really good stormwater velocity. But we are also going to be seeing some confluence bands, so there is possibly we could be seeing backed winds across Mississippi and Alabama. But here's the overall tornado threat: 5% chance. Again, include the 11 million people. So this tornado threat is going to be pretty widespread. We're going to be seeing kind of two modes. We're going to be seeing one mode in the early afternoon across the actual river itself, Tennessee, far west of Mississippi, and as well eastern Arkansas. And then we're going to have our second, more discrete mode in the practically between 18Z and around 2Z. So that's going to be across Mississippi, Alabama, and eventually Georgia and southeastern Tennessee. But overall, those two modes are allowing for a really widespread area of 5%. Yeah, we are going to be seeing definitely some good supercells and possibly long-lived supercells and long-track supercells, and that's what we have pretty widespread 2% all the way going to the Carolinas and from Texas to Carolinas. But that 5% is going to be the main area of interest. And like I said, there is definitely a possibility. The SPC did consider going 10% hatched last night, but again, there really was a few disagreements between models, especially between the mesoscale models. So we're going to continue to wait for a potential 10 hatch, but as of now, we are still at a 5%. So let's go ahead and get a look here at the latest HRRR. This is the 12Z, and this is the 12Z is obviously going to go 48 hours out, so that's what we're going to be looking at. Although it's not the latest run of the 12, or not latest run of the HRRR, the other HRRR models obviously do not go 48 hours out, and that means it wouldn't be in range. But here's the overall kind of setup right now, so you can kind of tell if we actually wait. There's that trough right there. Right here, there's the axis practically. This is the axis right here. It's going to practically be negative tilted. There you see kind of that cyclonic formation having it amplitude in that cyclonic kind of formation. That's where we're going to be seeing that negative tilt. So it's actually a pretty amplified trough here once you go towards practically tonight. And there you see that really strong kind of long wave type structure. You kind of see that long wave structure. This is not really a short wave really. It's going to practically go all the way from the Pacific Northwest all the way up towards the Great Lakes and as well the Mid-Atlantic. But here's the actual main axis. So it already is going to bring in some really strong and as well really good shear values, but the main axis, as you go towards the actual main event, getting towards now 7Z, there it is now. The axis is kind of towards New Mexico. But notice how it's still really broad, the shear. It's going to be really broad and weakening surface slope as it ejects towards the Ohio Valley, towards the Central Plains. So look at 14Z. Notice how there's not really a clear axis. It's going to be kind of towards right here in Texas. That's where we have that negative tilt. But this is a really very broad long wave structure. It's not really a short wave. It's not. I mean, it is amplified. However, again, there's not really an amplified axis like there was earlier in the Southwest with the system. So it is still going to bring in some really high shear values at the 80 knots, but look where that location is. It's going to be practically where that cold air defection is going to be across the Central Plains there. That's going to be really not where the severe weather setup is. That's where those thermals are not going to be seen or visible. So what's going to happen down here? How come the severe weather threat is down here? But there's practically no shear. I mean, there is going to be some shear, at least from the axis, on the northern open warm sector, so towards Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, as well as Texas in that open warm sector. There is going to be some actual good shear up to 70 knots at 500 millibars, but we're going to be lacking those winds because of the weakening surface wind field. We are going to be seeing that main issue towards the lower level. So 500 millibar isn't the main issue, but there is going to be really not too much necessarily at the central warm sector where that main tornado threat is going to be across Mississippi and Alabama. There's only be around 45 knots. But as we go towards around 18Z, 19Z, this starts to amplify a little bit more. And then we start to see, look at this, we kind of see a short wave across northern Mexico here. You kind of see a short wave developing. And this is actually going to bring in some shear on those lower, that lower level here. So it is going to bring in now shear across the Gulf Coast. It is going to bring that shear now in those areas where we need it the most. So there it is now. By the time there you see that short wave, here's that 500 millibar long wave with the main axis across the north to the northwest of that risk, and then you have that second kind of short wave, very very weak short wave that's going to bring just enough. So once you have kind of that short wave and long wave kind of eject and bringing kind of in the same area, it's going to allow for a little bit much higher winds at the 500 millibar. So that's going to bring in now nearly 50 knots. But notice at 20Z, that areas in that northern open warm sector is going to be experiencing up to 80 knots near Tennessee, as well as nearly 70s and upper 60s across Arkansas and Mississippi. So these areas right here are actually going to be the area to watch out for, definitely, because that's where we're going to be seeing our highest shear at 500 millibars. But they're not going to be seeing too much at 850 millibars. So we go to 850 millibar. This is where we're going to be seeing that lower level. This definitely going to be pretty important. So let's go ahead and look at that low level jet. So there is going to be some interaction with the southeast tropical ridge down here. So with that interaction with the weak trough, that's actually going to allow for that low level jet to bring in some actually decent winds. So this is not what we're looking at. We're going to be looking at, here's 14Z, 15Z. So this is what I'm talking about. With that interaction with that low level jet, that 500 millibar one, and then the ridge down here is going to allow for a little jet down here just outside of that high pressure because of that kind of friction we're seeing there. So that's going to allow for winds between that, practically between that ridge and as well between that upper level low. So that's going to allow for actually some decent 850 millibars actually going to be in the area where we're watching most, which is going to be down here. And that's why that tornado threat's mainly over here and not up here where we had that highest 500 millibar shear, because frankly, the 850 millibars is practically more important. 37 knots, 38 knots, not the highest, but as you go towards now 19Z and 20Z, you could get over 40 knots in some cases. But we're still going to be seeing some decent 850 millibar flow up here, so there is definitely that reasoning for that 5% getting larger. But look at 22Z now. Look at that. Now going to get up to 47 knots, possibly nearly 50 knots in some cases across northern Mississippi and lower Tennessee at 850 millibars. So that's why we're going to be watching out for practically these two modes. Like I said, there's going to be two modes, and you're going to be seeing it once I look at the composite reflectivity. There's two modes. There's going to be one over here that is going to be tricky, whether it's tornado threat or wind threat. And then there's going to be that second mode, that main mode, at least as of now, the main mode, which is going to be over here across Dixie, that central Dixie area. And there's going to be that upper one closer to the Mississippi Delta. And as we go to 23Z and 0Z, this is what's going to get very interesting now. We're going to get values of over 47 knots, 49 knots, and even going to get nearly 50 knots across these areas that are also in a pretty big tornado environment. So these areas as well across Tennessee, Northwest Georgia, Northern Alabama, as well as Northern Mississippi. That's another reasoning why this 5% tornado risk has now been enlarged, because there's many areas that have pretty much really good opportunity for tornadoes, and by 1Z and 2Z, we're going to really continue to watch out for these areas along the border of Mississippi there. I mean, I guess we could click a random sounding at 23Z somewhere here, but again, it's probably going to be contaminated. Considering we're looking at the shear, but this is actually not bad of a sounding here. There is going to be definitely some stronger shear value in the lower levels compared to yesterday's ARRR. That's where you have that pretty good storm motion around 40 knots going to the east-northeast. These storms are really not rushing. This is typically something you won't see in a in a winter setup where you have a rushing Arctic blast. These storms are going to be moving really quickly, but this is going to be more of a relaxed, discreet mode, which is why there is this tornado threat. We do have some good shear though, 40 knots at lower levels. Actually, SRH has increased a little bit at 243. We kind of have somewhat directional shear here, and then you don't really have, you have a slight EML, but really good instability here at 1300 mixed layer Cape and 1200 1200 surface-based Cape. But if we look now toward, let's go kind of 22Z towards the kind of east central Mississippi area, which is where we're really watching out for those supercells. You kind of have, again, these photographs that are actually not too shabby. You have that really decent kind of 0 to 3 shear right here, and it's going to be a storm motion around 40 knots east northeast. And then you kind of have practically at the kind of end at that 3 kilometers, it's going to kind of go back south. So that's going to give you that eastern motion, and then really good instability, especially that mixed layer cape at 1300 shears, not too shabby. But like I said, it could be better at the lower levels. But we're going to be looking at soundings later on once we get to the actual thermos. And speaking of thermos, here we are. They're next. So we're going to be looking at now the overall, the open warm sector as well as the confluence band. So if we go towards, this is today. We don't want to look at today. If we go to already by 5Z, 16, 17, you kind of tell there is that moisture really getting pushed in. So there is that big blob of thermos across the Gulf of Mexico, and with that short wave across Mexico specifically, that's going to really help the system a lot, because it's going to give the opportunity for the thermos to get picked up and practically sent into the United States here across Dixie. So that's going to be a really big big yielding factor toward the severe weather, because that main axis at 500 millibar is going to be way up there towards Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. So really, if you have a weak 500 millibar, you're not going to really get those thermos you need, because it's going to be pretty weak. But with this second short wave, it's going to really allow for, here you see by 14Z, 15, 17Z, now these thermos are getting really picked up. But look at 13Z, you kind of see there is the nose of there's the nose of that moisture. So there's that kind of nose of that warm sector kind of being pushed to the north. So if you get out by 14Z, 15Z, and eventually by 17Z, this moisture in this open warm sector is going to definitely become, it's going to definitely have a lot more instability. If you look at 17Z, you're going to be seeing now values in the 70s for dew points, and then you're going to be seeing upper 60s all the way up towards Missouri, Arkansas. So this is where, at this point, by 18Z, it's going to get pretty interesting. So there is the kind of that mouth of that, or that nose of that moisture. There's that nose of that warm sector, and you see all that instability all across this whole area. And all you need is really those kinematics, and you're going to be seeing a pretty big setup here. So if we look at kind of towards that first motion, it's going to be practically in the 18Z, 17Z, and kind of between that time frame, you're going to kind of see that kind of form along the kind of Mississippi River Basin and Delta area. So that's where you're going to start to see these good, decent soundings here. Definitely could possibly see a few tornadoes in the early afternoon and late morning already by Arkansas, and as well Louisiana, and as well far western Mississippi, right along that river. So this is actually a decent sounding. You're going to be seeing those weaker low level winds. So that's where you're not going to be seeing a large photograph. But once you go towards the higher levels, there you see, at this point by the higher levels, there you see that wind shear really picking up. But going to be seeing an eastern motion around 40 knots as well. This is not too bad of a sounding when it comes to the the thermo. It's going to be seeing 2000 surface-based cape and 1200 mixed layer cape. SRH isn't too bad. It's just under 200, but it's definitely not the best tornado sounding, but you could get something out of it, especially if this confluence band does really kind of pop off right here. This is where you see that confluence band start to really pop off. So we do get anything along a confluence band, especially around 19Z, where you see this mouth of this moisture really start to really increase along the river. That's where you can possibly see a chance for something to happen, whether it's a tornado or a long-lived supercell. Here's another sounding. This is actually contaminated, but if we kind of go towards along the river again, eastern Arkansas, is going to be an area to watch out for. There you see, this is not bad of a sounding as well. Definitely really good moisture. Look at that LCL at 133 meters. It's really low and saturated sounding here. So that's going to be a plus side with this saturation. We're going to be seeing a little bit better 0 to 3 kilometer shear on this sounding. It's going to be a little bit more slightly on large, just slightly more, as we're going to be seeing 36 knots at 3 kilometers. This is definitely not bad with something, though. Definitely could inhibit possibly something, but there's going to be really, there's going to be just kind of veering throughout the surface, which again, isn't the best scenario for for tornadoes, but 2,300 cape as well. Look at that mixed layer cape up to 1,400. So as you can tell, once we get past 18Z, this instability is going to really increase. As we go to 20Z, then we're going to start to watch out for that second mode along the southern portion of Mississippi. So you can kind of see those two modes. Here's that second mode, 1900 cape. Definitely, that's where you're going to be seeing these more apparent EMLs. We go closer now. Let's go towards maybe closer to the river near Jackson. By 20Z, they're going to be seeing even going to be seeing these definitely decent soundings. 1700 cape up to 1100 mid-clear cape. SRH is still rather low, so we're going to have to kind of wait towards 21Z and 22Z for this main instability to come in hands. But there you see that mouth of that moisture along the northern portion of Mississippi by 22Z. And that's where that first mode is going to start to amplify across north central Mississippi. And at that point, it's going to be getting closer towards Tennessee. This is actually not bad of a sounding as well. Again, really, so oh my god, that LCL is at 67 meters at the surface. As we look at now the Tennessee as well in that first mode, we're going to definitely watching out for that kind of increasing severe weather threat as we go to the early afternoon, but it really won't be anything crazy until once we get towards past 0Z. But by 22Z, this is where that second mode now, that mainly discrete mode, is going to really start to pop off along the areas of that open warm sector. I mean, look at that instability developing across Jackson, Mississippi there. Really good instability. 15, almost 1,600 mixed layer cape, 2,200 surface cape. SRH is still rather low, so we're going to wait for that SRH to really increase. And again, the reason why the SRH is rather low is because we're seeing veering practically the whole way up, which, again, if you see veering all the way from the surface, all the way the whole way, then there is going to be definitely a possibility for, again, that would definitely be a factor towards why this is not already a 10 sig, because with that surface being rather weak, we're going to be seeing veering at the surface, which wouldn't really allow for much directional shear, which really wouldn't allow for much rotation within the updrafts, which wouldn't allow for much forcing, which, again, would kind of lead to a little bit less favorable for tornadoes. But as you go later on, we are going to start to see some better photographs as we go to now 23Z, and look at now by 0Z, going to be seeing a really good open warm sector across Mississippi as well, possibly on confluence bands. This is where we're going to start seeing some better 0 to 3 kilometers. You're going to be getting around 37 knots at 3 kilometers. Going to be seeing, we're going to be starting to get some practically southerlies, close to southerlies along the border. But look at Alabama here. Look at this sounding right here. This one actually does have practically southeasterlies, and this is actually going to be backed. So if we do get back to the surface along the border of Alabama, Mississippi, that's going to be the main area to watch out for sure. No question, that's actually a really good photograph. That was actually pretty enlarged as well. But there is definitely a possibility for some confluence bands across the border of Mississippi and Alabama. So this is why it's the main area to watch out for. Look at that photograph. Really good photograph. Look at that instability there. 1,800 mixed layer cape, 1,800 surface base cape. I'm actually going to save this sounding here. That looks like a really good sounding for sure. That's along the border. Again, that's the border of Mississippi and Alabama, which is going to be definitely, I'd say, the best area to watch out for tornadoes and those really good supercells. And then we go now by later on week as well, like I said, could see some storms up there towards Alabama. Northern Alabama, there is definitely possibilities for some as well tornadoes along that area. I mean, this is actually a really good sounding here as well. Look at that sounding. This is actually really good. 48, or actually, yeah, that's 48 knots at 3 kilometers. So definitely have to watch out for that area. But there's going to be a lot less forcing mechanisms in that area. And then if we go to 2Z, you guys start seeing as well this threat continue to push towards the border of Georgia and Alabama. And these areas can't be ruled out the possibility. I mean, these are some actually really good photographs because, like I said, this area right here is going to be really good when it comes to the 850 millibar and 500 millibar. So we're going to be seeing some really big blankets covered shear with that really as well high SRH. I mean, this SRH is not going to be that bad in these areas. So definitely really interesting area to watch out for. This video is really rather long, so I should probably speed up. But let's look at the overall composite reflectivity. So this is going to be kind of the areas to watch out for. So let's now go towards tomorrow. So this is now 68Z 10Z. So here's 13Z, 14Z. So you're not going to see anything pop up to really around 18Z. So there's that first mode right there, like I said, around eastern Arkansas, western Mississippi. There we're going to be seeing possibilities for some discrete cells, especially as we go towards 19Z and 20Z. That's when those potential that mouth or that nose, that open warm sector is going to start to push northward. So we're going to get a lot more instability. So we could very well see some supercells between 19Z and 20Z along the eastern Arkansas area, as well along portions of western Mississippi. And it's going to continue. That's going to kind of become one big blob, and it's going to kind of converge together. Um, as we possibly see kind of a cold pool up there. At least that's what models have been hinting to. And then by 22Z, we're going to be seeing possibilities for some embedded supercells along this area in 22Z. But notice how we don't have anything really popping off just yet along this main area. That's going to be towards really 23Z. And now we start to see that prefrontal confluence band now by around 0Z from Louisiana towards Alabama. And that's where we're going to start getting these supercells. Already seeing some spotty to semi-discrete supercells along Mississippi as well across the Louisiana area. As we go now to 1Z and 2Z, this is where these big supercells are going to be right here. Alabama, multiple lines of supercells along the areas of as well Mississippi. So since we're not going to be seeing a super high sugared environment, we're not going to be seeing the kind of these supercells kind of in one large line speeding in multiple areas. But we're gonna be seeing, like I said, it's gonna be really a relaxed, discrete mode. This is definitely not necessarily the most common December setup where you see Arctic cold front blasting through the area. Typically, you'd see kind of at least a large linear mode with then embedded supercells. But this is gonna be just discrete cells all over the place. And if we go to 3Z, now we're gonna be seeing those supercells along Alabama. But like I said, even by 1Z, you can't rule out the possibility for some tornadoes along Alabama, Georgia, and southern Tennessee. We could very well see some embedded supercells as well in that general vicinity. Let's now look at the overall 0 to 6 kilometer wind or shear vectors or crossovers, however you want to say. This won't take too long since this video is really being rather long. So here's a look at 17Z. Definitely some really good really good actually 0 to 6 shear crossovers all along this area in Mississippi, eastern Arkansas, and by 18Z, if you look at 18Z, notice how these really good 0 to 6 crossovers are kind of along that first mode, like I was saying, along the river. So that's where we're gonna be seeing that good overall directional shear and directional winds again, and right there near eastern Arkansas, you're gonna be seeing some rather good soundings here. This is not bad at all. Although there is, I mean, it's not bad at all considering there is going to be a weak little shear at that point at 18Z. But as you go towards now 20Z, this will get a lot better of an environment, especially across areas like northwestern Mississippi. It's going to be a little bit better when you're going to be seeing a little bit bigger photographs. And there's, like I said, there's that bigger photograph. As we go towards now north central Mississippi, again, going to be seeing some larger photographs and a little bit better photographs. And as we now go towards around, let's go 22Z. This is where it's going to start really popping off now as well by 0Z along the Mississippi and Alabama vicinity. So this is not too shabby. This is actually not that bad of a sounding as we now go towards the Alabama border with Mississippi. That's where as well going to be seeing some decent soundings. And then we go towards kind of the towards south central. This is also a really good sounding. That's some really good instability here. Really good thermos. But again, still lacking a little bit in the lower levels because of that weakening surface wind field. That's going to be the one reason why it's still a slight risk. And then as we look at the overall updraft helicity, which is definitely at least helpful to see where we're seeing possibility for some long lived supercells. So we kind of go all the way towards. There you see now by 18Z, 20Z, and 21Z, there are those cells right there along kind of that Mississippi River Delta, and that's what I'm talking about. Really gonna be watching out for those areas in northwest Mississippi, southwest Tennessee, and look how we are gonna be seeing some really high helicity values around here near Nashville. So definitely watching out for Nashville, and then by 0Z, you're gonna start seeing these storms now across the south central and southwestern portion of Mississippi. And then by 1Z and 2Z, they start to see this intensity increase a little bit towards once you get closer to the Alabama border. So definitely be watching out for pretty large area, definitely for sure, a really large area to really watch out for tornadoes along this area. And that's just using the updraft helicity. And then The last thing we'll be looking at on the HRR is going to be the Stormwater Velocity. This is also going to be giving us a better indicator where that overall instability is going to be. So if we look at while this loads for us, I'm not sure why it's going all the way back to tomorrow. I kind of had it set it up for, or I don't know why it's going all the way back to today. I kind of had it set it up for tomorrow, but let's now get a look at this. So this is 3Z. If this loads for us, this is now 13Z. So kind of by 13Z, you're kind of starting to see some values, some increasing values in that storm relative velocity. But as we now go towards around 14Z, not starting to see a few spots by 17Z. This is where we're going to start seeing these values start to pop off a little bit more. And I'm waiting for this to load here. But here's by 19Z, there you see those kind of small little couplets along that eastern corridor in the river, and that's what the western corridor along the river. You're gonna be seeing some spots of some good helicity here, values of over around 300. So this is gonna be an area to watch out for. Like I said, along that river, it's going to be the area to watch out for. Definitely for sure. I mean, they are in the 5% tornado for a reason, and I don't think they're going to get a 10% just considering. Uh, it could also be kind of as well pretty much wind as I kind of see possibly a cold pool up there, but uh, again, there is a possibility we could get a few tornadoes. I mean, this is actually a really good sound. This is actually a really good photograph right here. I mean, look at those winds there at 3 kilometers, 44 knots. This is a really good photograph. You see kind of towards more northeast storm movement. And look at that. That's backed winds right there. It's all those contaminated. I know it's contaminated, but that's backed winds right there. This is actually not bad of a selling as well. So that's definitely very interesting. And as you now go towards now right on the border, again, this is well, I believe this is what I believe this is 19Z. So let's go towards now the border there in the river. Again, these are not bad soundings whatsoever. I know there is some slight contamination, but that last one we just looked at was really good. We now go to by 21Z. Look at these spots right there near Stormwater Velocity. So there's gonna be a lot of potential rotation with these updrafts. Let's look at right here towards northwestern. Again, there's a lot of contamination within these soundings. So if we go to Mississippi, the northeastern portion, this is going to be as well really good sounding. Let's go now towards 22Z. And there, start seeing these cells popping off a little bit and across the southern portion of the state. So you're gonna start seeing a little bit of backing down here as well. So there's gonna be some prefrontal confluence bands along this area. This is actually not bad of sounding as well. So we're actually starting to see some more frequent backing along this areas of higher helicity. So that's where we're gonna be seeing possibility for a counter argument toward the SPC. But this is actually a good sounding, even if there is some contamination. There's a 1600 mixed layer cape, storm helicity around 300. This is not bad of a sounding. So there is definitely spots that are definitely worthy of 10% hatch, because there is going to be spots of backed winds along the border of Alabama and Mississippi, like this one. Again, there is contamination, but there is a lot of backed winds here. There you see those southeasterlies at the surface, which is going to be hinting towards backed winds. And this is actually another really good sounding. The instability is there, the shear is there, even the lower levels, 34 knots. You can't complain about that, considering we've seen other lower values in the 20s in this setup. But let's now go towards near Birmingham as well. That big pocket there. This is again gonna be seeing some backed winds here. We go to 2Z now. Gonna be seeing other pockets. There's these little couplets right here across western Alabama. That's where we're gonna be really watching out for possibility of some strong supercells that could definitely bring in tornadoes. But you guys kind of get the gist of it. This is actually another really good sounding here. So if you just kind of go all over this area, you'll be seeing some good opportunities for tornadoes all along the Alabama area. Even if we go towards maybe closer to Georgia, towards 2Z, we could also see some tornado soundings that are worthy of that 5%, which is why it's gone up to northwest Georgia now. So, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.